All right.
Yes, we are on. We are live now, Honorable. To the Lissu, I know you've had a hectic schedule, but I do appreciate you so very much for having time. You made time for us, for the Tanzanians in diaspora, and so many other people from different parts of the world that have been looking at you and admiring what you are doing in Tanzania. And I want to say congratulations for being the leader in opposition and now the guy that is going to face President Magufuli. And welcome to Echo FM. We are live, Echo FM on Facebook and Echo FM on radio. So let's go ahead and get started. I don't want to keep you for too long. So do you want to just give a brief introduction of who you are, just in case there's somebody out there that has never heard of Hon.Tundu Lissu?
Thank you so much, Monica, for having me. My name, as you have said it, my name is Tundu Lissu. I'm a Tanzanian citizen, and I'm currently running for the office of President of the United Republic of Tanzania. And, you know, a few years ago, 3 years to be exact, I spent 4 months in a Kenyan hospital, at the Nairobi hospital, trying to recover from some terrible wounds that I suffered after an assassination attempt in Dodoma, Tanzania's legislative capital. So here we are, 3 years later. I'm a presidential candidate, and I've just finished a massive election rally in Mbeya in southwestern Tanzania.
Thank you so much for that. So actually, because you just mentioned you spent 4 months in Kenya to get treatment after the assassination attempt. So I want to ask you, when President Magufuli was elected, he hired about 1,000 doctors, you know, to, I guess, make the healthcare in Tanzania much better. Why did you go to seek for actually emergency attention to your wounds or, you know, healthcare in Kenya? Is Kenya's healthcare better than Tanzania, or what was the reason for you to go seeking medical help in Kenya?
Well, the first thing is the Kenyan healthcare system is much better than Tanzania. And secondly, I was rushed out of Tanzania to Nairobi, Kenya, because I would have died. I would have definitely died had they tried to take me to Muhimbili National Hospital in Dar es Salaam. The decision to take me to Nairobi was okayed not only by the leaders present, but the permanent secretary in the Ministry of Health in those days, a medical doctor himself, Dr. Lissu, who said, man, I know what we have in Dar es Salaam. This man should go to Nairobi. So it is not only me saying that the Kenyan healthcare system is much better compared to ours. It was the permanent secretary in the Ministry of Health of Tanzania who was at the scene in Dodoma that day. And basically, it was his judgment that I should be taken to Kenya, which carried the day.
Okay. And do you know, or are you aware if your attacker or attackers have been arrested, or what is there an investigation to find who your attacker or attackers were? Also, too, can you tell us what is the political climate right now in Tanzania?
Well, with regard to the assassination attempt, there has never been any investigation, any investigation. The police have consistently said from the earliest days that they did not know who did it. They have no suspect. They never made any arrest. In fact, they never made any interview of any witness, you know. And here I am. I've been in Tanzania now for over a month, and it's as if nothing ever happened. For the 3 years that I was out of Tanzania, the excuse was, well, he is in Belgium, we cannot go to Belgium, which is nonsense, of course. But the truth of the matter is it was never investigated by the police as well as by Parliament. Remember, I was gunned down while attending parliamentary sessions in Dodoma, and a parliamentary committee was appointed to investigate the shooting. It never issued a report. What I hear is a report was prepared, and on the day it was supposed to be delivered to Parliament, it was yanked off the timetable, the parliamentary timetable. So it has never been investigated. Never. Not even an interview, not even a pretense. Yeah. Anyway, with regard to your second question, what is the political climate now in Tanzania?
Right.
The answer is it's a very tense political climate. We are in the midst of an election campaigns which started last week. Now, nearly a quarter of our parliamentary candidates from my party, the largest opposition party in Tanzania, were disqualified. Almost a third of our municipal candidates, because our general election is also to appoint local government authorities. Nearly a third of our candidates countrywide were disqualified.
Wow.
And I barely squeaked through the nomination process. So we have a situation where a huge number of opposition candidates, and I'm not only talking about my party, I'm also talking of ACT Wazalendo, the second largest opposition party in the country. And we have had these mass disqualifications of our candidates on completely bogus grounds, completely bogus. And when I say bogus, I mean it. I am an expert on Tanzania's electoral law. I know it is the grounds are bogus when I see them.
Yeah.
So the political situation is very tense.
So, Honorable, let me ask you, when you talk about your shooting, it actually, it's chilling to even think that, there was an attempt on your life. You were shot 16 times. You went away from Tanzania for a few years, and then you came back, which means somebody was trying to eliminate you, somebody that thinks that you are a threat, right? And you know that. So
Yes.
What gave you the courage, and this determination that you have, that you had to come back and face the same president that you have said is a dictator? Why did you come back to Tanzania? Are you afraid for your life?
Listen, 2 hours before I was shot 16 times, the president was on national television, and he said on television that those who oppose his economic war, his so-called economic war, do not deserve to survive. Those are his exact words. And 2 hours later, I lay bleeding nearly to death. Now, I was the consistent opponent of his economic and mining policies. And I think one of the reasons I got shot was because I was the most credible and the most consistent critic of his government policies with regard to the mining sector and with regard to human rights generally since the time he took over office. Now, with regard to the second question, why did I come back? Had I not come back, the situation would have been very, very bad, because after 5 years of terrible repression, of unrelenting war on the opposition, almost everyone had given up hope that there would be meaningful change this election season. And therefore, I had to make a choice: remain in exile and let Magufuli and his henchmen win hands down, or come back and face them squarely, take the bull by the horns. And I chose the latter. I chose to come back to come back home, in spite of the dangers, in spite of the risks. I had to come back. Your listeners may want to know that when I was shot, I had 6 criminal cases in the magistrate's court of Dar es Salaam. Those cases are still pending. So I decided to come home to face these autocrats in these elections, precisely because you do not run away from dictators. You do not appease them. You fight them. You defeat them through democratic processes.
Okay, so what I can say about that is you chose to sacrifice for the betterment of your country. So with that said, then why do you think that you are a better candidate than, say, the incumbent President Magufuli and the others that are running? And also, what is your party's strategy to win this election, both in the mainland and Ziwani, that is Zanzibar?
With regard to the first question, why do I think I'm the better candidate? My record speaks for itself. For over 25 years, I have stood out and have been counted as one of the most consistent fighters for justice and human rights in Tanzania. I started when I was still in my student days, and I have never stopped. I got my first sedition case in 1999 during 2001 during the presidency of President Benjamin Mkapa, the late Ben Mkapa. I got 2-3 more other sedition cases during the presidency of Jakaya Kikwete. And under Magufuli, within 1 year, between June 2016 and the time I was shot in September of 2017, I got 6 criminal cases related to lawful activities, to statements which are completely protected under our constitution. But I got 6 of them. So my record speaks for itself. A consistent fighter for social justice, a consistent defender of democracy and human rights in Tanzania, and I spent 2 terms in parliament defending these causes for Tanzania. I have spent, like I said, 2.5 decades fighting for the people of Tanzania. Magufuli does not have that kind of record. No one else in Tanzania has that kind of record. And if you look at the response of the people of Tanzania currently, it tells you that I am the man to remove Magufuli from office.
Okay. So, for us, or anybody else looking from outside, yeah? When we look into Tanzania and we see that, when Magufuli was elected as president, he cut back on, things like limousine, flying first class to Europe, etc. These are some of the perks that African leaders have always taken advantage of. Hang on just a second. I don't know what happened there.
I'm hearing you loud and clear.
Okay, so these are some of the perks that some of the African leaders have always taken advantage of, and they take advantage of these things on, the dime of, taxpayers. So when Magufuli cuts things like that, perks like that, like no flying first class, limousine, we see as if he's reducing, the burden on taxpayers, and we see as if, he's caring about taxpayers. What do you say to that? Is that an example of, what the world is supposed to see? Is that's just a facade? What would you say to that?
I will tell you that is the kind of the nonsense that is fed on people who do not know better. President Magufuli doesn't fly out at all. He basically does not travel outside the country. But that is not to say that he is frugal in his spending behavior. If you look at his presidential entourage in Tanzania today, he moves around in an entourage of more than 100 expensive, the latest word in Japanese, vehicle technology. Those are the cars that he moves around with. He has a helicopter gunship overhead, bought from France. You know, his motorcade is one of the biggest that you can think of in that part of the region, and in this part of the region. And therefore, public spending actually has shot sky high under his rule. I will tell you, when he came to office in 2015, our external debt was about $9-10 billion, around thereabout. Today, our external debt is over $21 billion, over nearly more than 40 trillion Tanzania shillings. Now, where has he taken the money from? Why is he taking this massive external debt on the to be? Remember, another thing, this is the president, the only president of our past 5 presidents who has built an international standard airport in his home village, and it is used for only one purpose: to take him home during Christmas and Easter, or to take his mom home whenever the old lady wants to go to the village. A multi-billion shilling airport built purely to serve the president's own personal needs. That is not different from the late Mobutu Sese Seko, who built this massive airport in the middle of the forest in DRC during his long corrupt tenure. So we have a president clearly who does not have any of the accolades, that he does not deserve any of that.
So, okay, if elected president, what is your plan to recover? Did you hear me?
I'm listening.
Yeah, what is your plan to recover?
Yes, I'm hearing loud and clear.
Okay, what is your plan to recover money lost and to rebuild Tanzania? What's your plan? And actually, just on that, I'm going to give you an example with our former president, President Kibaki. He went back and took all the money that had been stolen, from citizens of Kenya, and he reinvested that money in the economy. So what is your plan if you're elected as president, and what are you going to do so that you can, rebuild the economy for Tanzania?
You see, our platform, our manifesto is based on three key points: freedoms, justice, people-centered development. We want to restore our basic freedoms as citizens, economic freedoms, civil and political rights and freedoms. That is number one, because after 5 years of autocracy, we need to reclaim our rights as citizens. Our second plank is justice. We need to do justice to our people. Now, number 3 is people-centered development. President Magufuli has squandered massive amounts of money, of public resources, on projects which are by all standards, are white elephants. Our economy is hurting now. There is no, liquidity in our economy is way low. People are hurting economically. The business sector has been literally attacked. Right. Hundreds of business people have been arrested, and they have had their assets and and bank accounts seized and confiscated. We want to restore the private sector to where it is supposed to be as an engine of our economy. And that way, if we build the confidence of the private sector, then you will have foreign direct investment flowing back into the economy again. You will have our local businesses reinvesting into the economy to grow jobs and prosperity. That way, we'll get out of the current mess that we've been put under during these five dark years.
So I want to read something that John McCain said. The late Senator John McCain is someone that I look at his politics, his policies, and things like that. So with the climate in Tanzania, so I came across something that John McCain said, and he says, when you look at history, the first thing that dictators do is to shut down the press. We need to learn the lessons of history. And I just need your comment on that. So do you have free press right now in Tanzania?
I agree with the late Senator John McCain entirely. The first thing that Magufuli did, and he did not do it singly. He opened a frontal assault on our entire legal and constitutional order. So, destroyed any semblance of press freedoms, and for 5 years he's waged an unrelenting war on the democratic opposition in Tanzania, on civil society, the organized civil society in Tanzania, and any other power center in the country has been attacked. He has attacked the business community badly. He has attacked religious communities, and there has been just one huge assault on Tanzanian civil society and democratic institutions. Destroyed parliament as a forum for democratic decision making and holding the government to account. Destroyed the judiciary as an independent forum for protection of people's rights. So it is not just the free press which has been destroyed during these 5 years. It is also the opposition political parties. I was in exile for 3 years because of the assassination attempt. Our leaders, our members of parliament, my national chairman, everyone, every major political figure has a story to tell about these 5 years of terrible repression under Magufuli. So Senator John McCain, I can even say it is an understatement, actually, considering what we've gone through during these 5 years. So, just to give you an example, here you are, a Kenyan diaspora, organized and interviewing me, subjecting me to all these questions. The Tanzanian media dares not interview me. It's only actually this week, 2 days ago, that one of the major networks ran an interview that I did with them on Sunday. Everybody else is afraid of interviewing the main challenger to President Magufuli, because if they do so, the journalists will be threatened personally. Their magazines, their television networks, their radio stations may be shut down or heavily fined. One of them ran an interview I did with the BBC last month, and they were fined 15 million Tanzania shillings just for running an interview that I did with the BBC. Wow. So no press freedoms for 5 years of this autocrat.
Wow, that's amazing. Okay, so let's go to Chinese. They're invading most African countries. So a lot of African countries have been invaded by Chinese, given raw deals, loans, and Magufuli stood up to them. He's not allowing Chinese to come and control him. If you are the president, would you allow Chinese to come in, give you loans? And unfortunately, most of African countries have leaders that are corrupt and greedy. So all they look at is money, you know. And so once they get money, and I'll give you an example, you probably already know. Kenya, for example, is risking or is probably going to lose its Mombasa port. And if Kenya loses its Mombasa port, it is going to affect transportation to Tanzania and, you know, at large East Africa. So if you are president, what would you do? Would you allow these Chinese to come in, give you loans, and you know, even if it's to repair, construct roads, whatever, but you will pay back hefty?
Now let me put the record clear here. I think it is not correct to say that the Chinese are invading Africa. Our governments are inviting the Chinese to invest in our countries. The Chinese do not have Africa Command, which they can project to get rid of our leaders and so on and so forth. The Chinese are being invited by our governments.
Right.
Certainly, today's Chinese are not the Chinese who built the longest railway project in Africa in the 70s. Our to Kapirimposhi in Zambia, over 2,400 kilometers of the railway line were built by the Chinese. We have long-standing ties with the Chinese, historic ties. Yeah. They helped the liberation struggles in Southern Africa when everybody else was not helping our neighbors get rid of colonialism. So we have historic relations with the Chinese. Now, that said, we are not blind to the fact that the Chinese economic juggernaut today poses a major threat to sovereignties of our countries everywhere, not just in Africa, everywhere.
Right.
Where they have invested, they have taken over a huge chunks of public resources of the country is concerned. Mm-hmm. Now, that is not, I don't believe that is their fault entirely on their own. They are business people. They are a major economy. They are the second largest economy in the world. They need to make business. They need to make, to grow their economy. They have their own economic interests. The issue is, what are our economic interests vis-a-vis the Chinese? To what extent do we realize as governments and as countries that the Chinese have their own interests, and therefore in dealing with them, I don't believe we are going to stop dealing with the Chinese. The Americans are not stopping dealing with the Chinese. We're not going to stop dealing with the Chinese. All we want to do is we have to be able to negotiate fairer deals with them. Right. You cannot ignore the second largest economy in the world. You cannot ignore a country that invests more outside the country than any other country in the world. What we need to do is to be smarter, is to be sharper in our negotiations with the Chinese. We shouldn't be giving our public resources freely like we have done in some countries.
Okay. So what you're saying then is that you wouldn't allow them, to give you a loan, but to pay back, you probably have to allow them to come and be police commanders in your country. In Kenya we do have a case to where they were even beating employees for coming in late to work. And that to us looks like invasion, of Chinese, and that's where I was going with that. But because of time, we're pressed by
that is not an invasion, Monica. We should call things by their proper names.
Okay.
The Chinese have been invited by the government of Kenya. They are in Kenya because of you people inviting them.
They have been invited, and I'm not necessarily blaming Chinese, but I blame it on the government as well for allowing them to come and really take over. And like you said, yes, the government probably allows, or when they negotiate the loans, they do not negotiate fair interest or fair deals with the Chinese. So, but what I'm saying also too.
Well,
what I'm saying.
Well, I'm not going to comment on specifically on matters of Kenyan decision making. That will be too presumptuous of me doing that. All I want to say is countries make decisions as independent nations. And these investors, be they Chinese or American or British or whoever, are supposed to abide by the laws of Kenya. They are supposed to abide by the laws of Tanzania. I don't believe Kenya has laws that allow a Chinese investor to beat up his employees. I don't believe that Kenya does not have institutions that are supposed to deal with these kinds of abuses. It is the responsibility of the institutions of Kenya or Tanzania to deal with these kinds of abuses. They are certainly not acceptable. They're not acceptable anywhere. It wouldn't be acceptable if, like what happened in Kenya some years ago, when the great grandson of Lord Delamere killed someone in his farm. These things should never be allowed. Would be if they're done by a Chinese or by an American or anybody. Abuses should be dealt with as abuses. They should be fought. They should be opposed. Governments should take action against those who commit these kinds of abuses. And that is not specifically pointing and accusing finger to the Chinese. It is just stating the obvious that our governments have a duty to make sure that their citizens' rights are not abused.
Absolutely. And I couldn't agree with you more. But what I'm saying is that every country has its laws, so does Kenya.
Yes.
And I really do not want to talk too much about Kenya, because today is not about Kenya, it's about you, it's about Tanzania. What I'm saying is that some of these laws are not implemented to protect the people and to protect their rights. So that's all I was that's all I was trying to get to. So what we want in Africa, as large, and that's why you're here, because Tanzania's political climate, safety, and everything that happens in Tanzania affects what happens in Kenya. So we would love to know what's going on in Tanzania, and that's why it was good to have you on, because Kenyans are interested. And so when we know that we can go to Tanzania and we are going to be safe, because we're going to have a president that is going to look out not just for Chinese because they brought in money, but he's going to look out for everybody. He's going to implement laws, and that's the kind of that's exactly what I was getting into. But anyway, let's move on. So to beat an incumbent president is not easy. It's not an easy task, because in African countries, especially African countries, most African countries, where in most cases elections are not necessarily free and fair. Would you agree? So
we have never had free and fair elections in Tanzania since the advent of multi-party politics in the early 1990s. We are under no illusion whatsoever that this time around our task is even harder than we've ever had to face in previous elections, which were neither free nor fair.
Okay, so my question to that is, an incumbent president, he literally controls the the system, security apparatus. He has that, so it's almost safe to say that elections are predetermined, because he owns the security apparatus, internal security apparatus. So what makes you think, knowing that, what makes you think that you can actually beat Magufuli?
If I believed that this election is predetermined, I wouldn't waste my time and resources running as a presidential candidate. Neither would my party be that foolish to run in an election that it does not believe it has a good chance of winning. The truth is, I agree with you that we have a mountain to climb. We have a Kilimanjaro to climb because of what you say. This particular autocrat controls the entire machinery of government and the instruments of violence. And he has used these instruments of violence and the control of the Electoral Commission to his advantage. We know all that. But we also know that he has antagonized every other person, every other major sector of our society. He's made enemies everywhere. He's antagonized the working people. He's antagonized the peasant farmers. He's antagonized the business community. He's made enemies within his own party. He's made enemies with our friends and neighbors in the region and beyond the seas. A person, a president who makes that many enemies is ready for the taking. And therefore, even though we know that he has control of the machinery of violence and the Electoral Commission, mobilized like they've never been mobilized before. And I think we will create conditions in which, even with his control of the security services and so on and so forth, they will not be able to overcome the determined the tsunami that the people of Tanzania will unleash on them.
Okay. So with that said, Honorable, I'm not sure how many other contenders are there, but how come you guys did not, you don't have a coalition to have one candidate go against President Magufuli? Wouldn't that have been even better chances instead of dividing your votes?
That's a great question, Monica. We in 2015 we had a coalition called Ukawa, and my own reading of Ukawa is we did very, very well. However, after 2015, once President Magufuli came to office, he also learned that opposition coalition is a danger to his regime, and therefore what he did last year was to change the political parties' legislation and put impediments in the way of opposition parties forming electoral coalitions. Now I'll tell you what these impediments are. The current law says a political party that wishes to form an electoral pact with another party must put in writing everything. You know, your election strategy, your finance, whatever you may consider worthwhile you want to use in an election, you put that in writing and you submit it to the registrar of political parties, an appointee of President Magufuli. Now we know we are Tanzanian, and therefore we know the reality of our situation. You do that, and the registrar of political parties will take all your secrets which you have written to him, will take them straight to President Magufuli. And then you know what? The law says the registrar of political parties has power to say no to your electoral pact, to your electoral coalition. So you bare your souls, you reveal all your secrets, your strategies, your tactics, everything that you have, and it is given over to the other side. And then the registrar of political parties says, in the last 2-3 days of your preparations for election, he says, no, they always find excuses. Lawyers are never short of excuses. They will say, it is my determination that it is not in the national interest for this electoral coalition to be formed, and therefore I withhold my consent. Now, we are not foolish. We are not that foolish to reveal our secrets to our enemies and then to be thwarted in our efforts to form an electoral pact. What we are doing instead, and it's very difficult, I must admit, we are exploring ways of working together which will keep us safe from Magufuli and his registrar of political parties. So we are talking, we don't have that many options, because the moment we put anything to paper, we are done. We have to submit it to the registrar, and the rest will be history, as they say. Okay. So we explore, I personally believe that we need to form some kind of a working arrangement with ACT, the only other credible opposition party, because we've been just as wounded as they have. Okay. So but the reality is that our way to a coalition is full of traps, is full of impediments, and we must think carefully before we jump into that bottomless pit of troubles.
All right. Totally understandable. So I do have a question that I got from a Tanzanian here in diaspora, and I'm just going to read it as is. So she says, recently IMF or WB has declared Tanzania as a second economy. What's your comment on this? And also, should you be elected president, which areas will you give priority?
That is the biggest load of bullshit, I'm sorry to say, to use the term, but that is the biggest load of bullshit that we have had these past few months. The Tanzanian economy is on its knees. Investment has fallen in 5 years by 50%. The private sector has fallen from 18% growth rate in the 5 years, the last 5 years of President Kikwete, to 5% currently. Businesses by hundreds have closed down. Investors have fled Tanzanian economy to Mozambique and Kenya. Our business people have been under continuous attack for 5 years. Everyone is hurting economically. And therefore, to hear this news that we are a mid-level economy is, I'm sorry to say, the biggest nonsense that we have been visited on us in the past few months. Right. It's just that, just nonsense.
Okay, so I have
millions of our young people are unemployed. You know.
Yes.
Our tourism has basically collapsed because of COVID-19. You have over 90%, drop rate in tourist numbers. And still they're giving us these funny stories about a mid-level economy. And that's nonsense.
Actually,
I'm sorry to say.
You just mentioned COVID-19, and that I think I feel like I want to ask you this. Is there COVID in Tanzania? Because I think from what I got from my Tanzanian friends, kids are going to school normally, and people don't wear masks. Is there COVID in Tanzania, or is just other places in the world that COVID has affected?
Our president and his government have said publicly and have declared to the world that Tanzania is COVID-19 free. Not only that, about 3 weeks ago to be exact, a law was passed which criminalizes any publication of any information on any pandemic. Right. So if today you publish in your WhatsApp or your Twitter account, whatever, that some people have contracted COVID-19 in Beira, where I am currently, or in Dar es Salaam, or any other part of Tanzania, you'll be committing a criminal offense for which you may be sent to jail. So the official story is there is no COVID-19 in Tanzania. However, you arrive in Dar es Salaam today. If you arrive in Dar es Salaam International Airport today, They will tell you to show that you have a certificate that determines you COVID-19 free. I have been traveling around this country this past 2 weeks on a chartered aircraft.
Yeah.
At every airport I have stopped, including Songwe International Airport this morning, earlier today, you have medical personnel taking, these COVID-19 tests, and that has been the case throughout the period I've been on the road using our airport. So, on the one hand, they say we are COVID-19 free. On the other hand, they have deployed these medical personnel in airports, local airports everywhere, and they are, looking at whether we have COVID-19 or we don't. It's bizarre to be fair. It is bizarre.
What do you think?
Of course, it is true, and I have to recognize this. It is true that we have not seen the kind of deaths in Africa, not just in Tanzania.
Right.
We stopped giving any information on our numbers on April 29. But it is true that we have not seen the kind of ravages from COVID-19 in Tanzania and other African countries, Kenya included, that we have seen in the north, for instance.
So, but do you think that,
all across Europe and in Asia?
But do you think that there is COVID-19 in Tanzania? What's your thought?
I believe there is, yes.
Okay.
I believe there is because they have medical personnel in airports taking our temperatures. If there was none, they wouldn't have all this medical personnel taking our temperatures.
Okay. All right. So then, I've seen your videos, and you pull masses, and I mean, which is good, for your campaign. But if you do believe that there's COVID-19, shouldn't you be advising the attendees to wear masks, or is that not allowed in Tanzania?
Well, I've told you that number one, it is a criminal offense. But I wouldn't be scared of being arrested if I believe there was something that needed to be said. What I want to say about these massive crowds that we are attracting in our meetings is this: it is literally impossible. It is literally impossible to tell people to take COVID-19 measures when the president and the entire government and everybody is saying we are COVID-19 free. It is literally impossible because people come by their tens of thousands. You simply cannot. You either go to meetings and meet these tens of thousands of people, or you don't. And so we're taking risks. We're taking risks.
I agree with you, because my president says too that there is no COVID-19 and we shouldn't be wearing masks. So I totally agree with you and I can relate. Okay, so I do have another question from a Tanzanian, and they said, aside from presidential runs, do you think that your party stands a chance of winning parliamentary seats, and if so, by what percentage?
I wouldn't talk about percentages. I wouldn't necessarily talk about percentages. As I said earlier, we have a situation where 55 of our 244 parliamentary candidates have been disqualified, and we are fighting to have them reinstated and running. And therefore, I wouldn't talk about percentages. However, the candidates who are up and running and campaigning stand very good chances of winning, and that is what I will tell my Tanzanian compatriots at home and abroad. That look at what is happening in Tanzania, look at the numbers coming to our meetings, look at the enthusiasm, and look at how tired the people are of the current regime, and that tells us there is a lot of hope. I will not be running, I said earlier, I will not be wasting my time and resources running I didn't believe that we have a chance. It is difficult, no doubt. It is going to be massively difficult because of the autocratic nature of our government, because of the hopelessly biased electoral commission, no doubt. But the people of Tanzania are capable, and I think are prepared to spring a major surprise this election season.
So the next question is from Samson Muirore. Samson is from Kenya, and he asks, ask about East African community. Are we headed somewhere, or are we speeding for failure? And his second part of that question, he says, why have the African presidents ignored a Zoom meeting to discuss the corona pandemic, and why haven't they put lockdown on the whole of Africa to end this pandemic?
That's a very good question. That's a great question from Samson Miruri. A friend of mine who is very humorous said the East African community is in ICU. It is under intensive care in a intensive care unit.
Yeah.
It is on its knees. And the reason is President Magufuli and Tanzania. President Magufuli believes, and he has acted on his belief, that Tanzania can ignore the world, that somehow Tanzania owes the world a living, that we can do without the world. We can do without our neighbors. We can do without East African community. We can do without SADC. We can do without AU. We basically can do without the world. Now, this misguided isolationism is responsible for the current state of affairs within the East African community. It is, I'm sorry to say, on its deathbed, unless we win this election. I believe, and I have stated so, I believe that Tanzania is important to the East African community and to Southern Africa. I believe that Tanzania needs the East African community and needs SADC and needs all our neighbors and international friends. We need the world more than the world needs Tanzania. The world can get what Tanzania produces from so many other countries of the world. If the world turns its back on us, we are finished as a nation. That is my belief. And therefore, to salvage the East African community, we must defeat President Magufuli. To return the country back to the international fold, to the regional fold, and to the continental fold, we must defeat President Magufuli. If we don't, this country is going the way of Zimbabwe, or perhaps worse.
Okay, another question from David Dambre. David is from Togo, but he says, like I said, when you become a leader, especially going for presidential seats, that's the highest seat in the country, you become an international leader, and so many people look up to you. So this question is from David Dambre from Togo, and he says, Monicah, ask him, what is his policy to reintegrate Tanzania in the international community, because he claimed Tanzania has been isolated by the international community under the current president. And it's a three-part question. I can read the other two parts later if you want. I can read it now.
Well, let me tell you, the answer to that question is very simple. If you want to be part of the international community, you have to play by the rules and norms of international community. In other words, we have to abide by our international obligations. we must respect our obligations to the world. We have obligations to the world. We are signatories to numerous international treaties and conventions. We have duties to perform to the world. And if we want to be part of the world, we must play by the rules of the world. And what I will do, I will return our country to the international fold by playing by the international rules of good behavior, by becoming good international citizens.
His second part, he says, ask him what would be the military's role in his administration and how is he going to keep them aligned with his government.
Well, our military, unlike many other militaries in the continent, our military has never carried out a coup d'etat. Our military has been under civilian control since independence and will continue maintaining civilian control of the armed forces during in my presidency. What I will do, different from what Magufuli is doing. Magufuli has tried to use the military, our military, in a partisan fashion by making them an instrument of his ruling party. What we will do under my administration is turn the military to where it belongs, defending our borders, defending our constitution, defending our people's rights. And that requires a military that is non-partisan, that is politically independent, that does not answer to any political party. It only answers to an elected government through established laws, both of the military and the civilian laws. So my program for the military simply is to try and free it from the current position it finds itself, being tied to this CCM machine that is completely failed.
His third part of the question, he says, does he see any military to military cooperation or engagement with other militaries such as US military? And he says, I'll be listening and I'll be watching.
We have always, since independence, since the earliest years of independence, we have had military cooperation with other countries. Our military officers have been trained in China, in Canada, in the UK, in Nigeria, in India, everywhere. We have maintained military-to-military links with the militaries of the world, and it will not be different under my watch.
Okay, so I have a statement that just came through, and someone said, we have been watching you campaign and you are pulling huge crowds in Tanzania. Congratulations, and we will be watching you and sharing your vision. That is someone from
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Thank you very much.
And also too, I think I have another question from someone from, I have questions. Swahili. Oh my God, they sent it in Swahili. Lord Jesus. Okay.
Well, my Swahili is passable, so I can answer it.
Yours is perfect. Mine is horrible. The problem is mine. That's what the problem is. But I'm going to try. So she says, dunia nzima inatambua kama yeye alinusurika kifo kwa watu wasio julikana. Je, akipata urais atawafuatilia na kuwafungulia mashtaka ndani au atawasamehe?
Do you want a translation, or I should just hazard an answer?
I understand. Just answer it.
Okay. Earlier today, in my meeting today in the southwestern city of Mbeya, I reiterated my position that if elected president of the United Republic of Tanzania, I will not seek revenge. Revenge is for the small-minded. Revenge is for cowards. What I will do instead is, we have gone through hell these past few years. In order to prevent us from going through another hell, I will form a Truth and Reconciliation Commission of the type that was established in Kenya following the December 2007 and January 2008 violence, post-electoral violence in Kenya. And much earlier, the Truth and Reconciliation Commission that was formed by Nelson Mandela immediately after the fall of apartheid regime in 1994. What we need is national reconciliation. Now, to have national reconciliation requires the truth about our past to be told publicly, to be revealed. And therefore, my plan for national reconciliation is tell the truth. Tell the nation the truth, nothing but the truth about past abuses, about all this violence that we have had to endure, including the shooting against me of 3 years ago. If you tell us the truth, then you will be pardoned. There will be no witch hunts, provided we sit as a nation and tell each other the bitter truth, the dark truth of our history. And that way, in my view, will help to move us forward. Revenge is not the way forward. Mahatma Gandhi said, an eye for an eye will make us all blind. I'm not interested in revenge. I'm interested in moving forward, but without forgetting our terrible past.
Okay, I have another question here. Again, it's in Swahili. And she says, kwa nini kupiga kwake risasi ndio anaitumia kama kigezo cha kuonyesha huruma kwa wananchi ili wampe kura?
There is a bit of that I hear quite often, that why are you using the shooting against you as a political for political purposes? It was a political assassination. I was shot because of my political convictions.
Yeah.
I was shot because of my political position. Nothing but my politics. Now, if I were the only victim of this murder and mayhem that we have seen in these 5 years, I probably wouldn't be speaking about it. But the truth of the matter is, I am the lucky one. I survived. I'm here to tell the story.
Yes.
There are people, many people who have been killed in these 5 years. Others have been disappeared, abducted and disappeared, not to be seen again. But, people have been tortured in the dungeons, in the police cells of this regime. People have been terribly, have gone through hell. Our business community has suffered. Our working people have suffered. We have gone through hell. And each one of us Tanzanians has his or her own September 7th, the date I was shot 3 years ago. Each one of us has a tale to tell of the terrible privations, of the terrible repression that we have been visited on these past 5 years. And therefore, my story, I use my story to tell the nation's story. There are people who have been murdered in broad daylight purely because they were political opponents of CCM. There are people who have gone to prison purely because of their political convictions. There are people who have been abducted and disappeared, as I said, I'm repeating myself, because of their political positions. So it is not just the assassination attempt against me. It is a calamity, a national calamity that must be told and told and told again, so that it does not happen again.
Would I hear from you, Honorable Tundu Lissu? the American presidents, when they're elected, in their first speech after elections, they usually will tell us, I'm going, apart from the current one, but they usually will tell us, I'm going to be a president for who elected me and who did not elect me, whether you're white, blue, yellow, black, I'm president for the people. Would you be giving a speech like that? Is that what you're saying? That it doesn't matter, what their background is, whether they elected you, whether they even shot you, so are you going to be that president for the people regardless of their political affiliation?
I have said previously, and I will say it again. I will be the president of the United Republic of Tanzania. I will be the president of the people of Tanzania. I will be their comforter in chief. I will not be their I will not be their tormentor in chief. I will be their protector in chief. I will be their comforter in chief. Anyone, any Tanzanian, any person who lives in Tanzania can rest assured that in my presidency, they will have a protector in chief. They will have a chief defender of their rights. They will have someone who will comfort them in their hour of need.
Now, because my Swahili is totally broken, because I grew up in Nakuru, and it's mixed with, what we call Sheng, so it's not a perfect Swahili. So I had to ask somebody to help me write a statement. So I'm going to read the statement to you in Swahili. And it says, Mheshimiwa, nashukuru sana kwa kujumuika nasi katika muda huu ambao umetigwa na shughuli za kampeni. Tafadhali tuma salamu ama taarifa zako kwa Watanzania na wafuasi wako dunia nzima.
Asante sana. Tell him or her I said asante sana. Nawatakia marafiki zangu wa Kenya, ndugu zangu wa Kenya, na marafiki zangu na Watanzania wenzangu, nawatakieni kila la heri na maisha mema, na Mungu awabariki. Tusaidiane, tuijenge nchi yetu, tuirudishe nchi yetu katika misingi ya uhuru, haki na maendeleo ya watu.
Asante sana Mheshimiwa.
I'm listening.
Oh, somebody is talking to me here, and I was just going to mention to you that East Africa, Tanzanians, the whole of East Africa is watching today, and somebody wanted me to mention to you that they are watching. So now you know. But I want to let you go because I know you're tired. You need to go get some rest, and so you can hit the road again tomorrow.
I need to go get some food, Monica.
Exactly. That's exactly why I'm trying to get you out of here. I haven't even looked at Facebook to see what questions are coming. But all of you that are watching, I want you to know I appreciate you so very much. It's usually easier if you can send me your questions before time. That way I can read them. But it's difficult for me to concentrate on what is going on Facebook, so I can ask Honorable the questions. But what I can do is I can read your questions, and then when Honorable comes back again, because you will come back again, right?
I will.
Yes. So when he comes again, I can ask him those questions. So you guys keep on writing your questions, and we can ask him those. So Honorable Tundu Lissu, I'm going to let you go, and I appreciate you very much, and good luck in your campaign.
Thank you so much, and God bless.
All right.